She was a building friend. We both lived in the same building. And at first you're in shock when I heard about this. I watched the policeman go up and the doorman told me, and I can't imagine anybody having one bad word to say about Katie.
I'm a customer, and I've been a customer for her for forever, her beautiful clothes. But I was just in London, and in the stores, in Harris, they have her pocketbook, her clothes, her dresses, and everywhere you go in Paris, in Madrid, she's famous. She's famous. It's so sad. She's only 55, and this is just terrible.
I arrived in New York about 8 months ago. I realized I needed a crossbody.
Sup, sobers? A recent U.S. study found that in only 50% of cases where someone chooses to leave this life on their own volition, do they leave a note behind. And as we've explored in my last 4 episodes about Avicii, Chester Bennington, Chris Cornell, and Anthony Bourdain, none of those guys left a note. But in the case we're talking about today, there was a note. And man, it was cryptic. It was confirmed by police, obviously never released to the public. But the things that were released to the public, number 1, how did they get them? And number 2, they're pretty interesting. And though my original belief was that a note being left behind would give us some sort of clues or answers or something to go off of, that's not at all the case. In fact, this note leaves me with way more questions than answers. It makes me really wish that we had the full note disclosed so we could see exactly what was going on that made Kate Spade want to take her own life. And with her passing away just 3 days before Anthony Bourdain did, it just felt right for her to be the next person in my series. And I sure did not expect that this case of all the cases I've done would lead us right back to Isaac Kappy again. This one's a crazy one, you guys, so
let's go. Alcohol.
all right, okay, welcome back to Sobering Stories with me, DJ Petrovsky. First order of business, I hope you guys like the new intro video. Personally, I'm stoked about it. I am very proud of myself. My editing skills gradually improve week after week, and I had that in my head as a vision, and it was cool to see it come to life. So let me know. Second order of business this week is going to be our sponsor, and the sponsor this week is me. Because, well, I do all the freaking work. No, seriously though, I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about myself and kind of just generally give you little tidbits of information here and there, fun facts. My name is DJ Petrovsky. I'm an alcoholic, and I have been sober for about 5 years. Actually, it's coming up on 6 years in April, late April. Anyways, the reason I ended up getting sober is because, well, I was a piece of shit.
Slick back hair, white bathing suit, sloppy steaks, white couch.
Oh, I miss those nights. I was a piece of shit, though.
Used to be.
I said was.
Let him hold the baby. People can change. I used to be a piece of shit.
There's an episode I did called Accident or Murder. It's like the second, maybe third episode I ever did. No, maybe fourth. But anyways, it was like one of my early episodes, and the story of that guy is literally what could have happened to me. That one hit kind of close to home. Had some sort of divine intervention not happened, had my amazing partner Kim not been so supportive and taken things so seriously at that time, I could have been responsible for something completely unforgivable, and I might have lost my son because of my addiction issues. So after being arrested and sitting in jail for a few days, I realized I never thought I'd be sitting in jail. Like, that was just one place I never ever expected in my life to be. I was always super, good at school, got good grades, very involved, extracurricular stuff, went to college. But slowly my addiction just kept creeping up on me, starting at 12 years old and then really getting bad when I was like 29. From that point, I just knew like I had to sober up, and it's been a long journey. I had a brief lapse. I talk a lot about lapses and relapses, but it was a brief lapse, probably like a solid month, where I was just on a solid hard bender and ended up getting a DUI ironically sleeping in my car. That was another good moment for me because it reminded me that I can't go back to drinking. Like, it is a problem. I don't have control, and it's something that I need to regain control of my life, of myself. And so that was probably like 2.5 years in. And since it was a month lapse, I hopped right back on the wagon, and I've been chugging along since. But one of my major triggers is boredom. And so I've had to find things here and there to really get me to focus and harness that addictive energy into something that is productive for me. And that's kind of where my love for making videos comes in, and just kind of my desire to not necessarily preach sobriety, but preach how much it's really changed my life and how much it's really helped me. And then when I see all these different stories and how much of a role that substances and addiction plays in them, it just makes me really passionate about helping others. And so that's what really drove me here. I wanted to do this YouTube channel. I really started on TikTok. I hate TikTok. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad I made the jump to YouTube, and I'm glad I'm here with all of you guys. So that's just a little bit about me. Maybe you guys don't care. I'll leave it in the description so you can skip it all if you want. But anyways, that's a little bit about me and how I kind of got here. And originally it was supposed to be like sober help videos, but those just weren't interesting. So kind of went more along the true crime lines, which is what I'm personally interested in all of the time. And of course, I've fallen into these deep, dark rabbit holes that we're now finding ourselves in now. So let's stop talking about it and let's freaking talk about it. Catherine Noel Brosnahan, which is like a mouthful of a last name, was born on Christmas Eve, December 24th, 1962, in Kansas City, Missouri. She grew up in a fairly Catholic household, said that they had very traditional Midwestern American values. She went to college at ASU, Arizona State University, where she studied journalism, and that's where she would meet her future husband and business partner, Andy Spade. Fresh after graduating, Andy actually moved to New York City and started an advertising agency called Spade Partners. And because him and Kate were dating, she decided that she would pack her things up and move out to New York City as well. And she started working for a small magazine there called Mademoiselle. It was a fashion magazine, so it was very much aligned with her degree in journalism, but it also got her involved with the fashion industry. Being a young, fashionable woman working in the fashion industry in New York City, she realized that there's a giant gap in the market. Either you're buying really cheap bags that aren't durable, nor are they fashionable, or you're spending all of your money to afford a really high-end designer bag, but it's just not affordable or realistic for your everyday woman or person who wants to carry an elegant handbag. And she decided that there's a gap that needs to be filled, and that's what she did. She wanted to come up with a way to make a designer bag at an affordable price. And thus, Kate Spade was born. Now at this point, her and Andy Spade were not quite married. She was still Kate Brosnahan. When they were trying to come up with names for the bag, at that point in time, purses and handbags weren't really printing the name of the designer, of the company, anything on the outside of the bag. So they figured, because Andy's a marketing advertising genius, the best way to get free advertising is to put the name, bam, right on the outside of the bag. Now, my personal feeling, they should have went with Brosna handbags, but they didn't. And they decided to go with something a little more catchy. And they figured if they combined Kate and Spade, half of her name, half of his name, not only did it have kind of a ring to it, but the two of them were together anyways, and they were business partners on this whole project, so it just made sense. Kate Spade. And they put that bad boy, bam, right on the outside of all their bags. So anytime somebody saw the bag, loved the bag, they didn't really even have to ask the person, where'd you get that bag? They could see, oh, that's a Kate Spade bag. And that was the start of a revolution, because all of the handbag designers after that started putting their names on the outside of the bags. And that's because of Kate Spade. And in 1993, Kate Spade, New York was born. By 1996, she opened up her very first boutique in Soho, which is like somewhere South Houston Street in Lower Manhattan. I have no idea. I've never been in New York. And over the next few years, Kate Spade, New York would massively grow in popularity. Everybody wanted a Kate Spade bag. And they were just grinding so hard, growing this massive business. They ended up opening 5 different locations in other states, including one in Los Angeles and one in Boston. They also expanded into international markets, and they were even able to get into department stores like Neiman Marcus and Saks Fifth. By 1999, the company had been so successful that Neiman Marcus offered to purchase 56% portion of the company, but that would allow them to expand their distribution horizons. That would allow them to get a good network for producing these bags, and it just would help with the cash flow situation on the back end. Also, Kate Spade probably had no idea that her brand was going to literally explode like this. So she could really use the backing of a major company that knows what they're doing. So that's what they did. They merged. To give you an idea of just how successful Kate Spade New York was, she sold 56% of the company for $34 million. Business is booming. There's not a whole lot for her to have to worry about now that she's got Neiman Marcus's financial backing and help with running things. And it seemed like in 2005, she was starting to feel like she wanted to settle down a little bit and focus more on family. And that's when her and Andy actually give birth to their daughter, Frances Beatrix Spade. She goes by Bea for short. Like most mothers, once Bea was born, she realized that she didn't want to spend all of her time working, grinding at the office, being married to a major company like this. So I think that was a major motivator in her and Andy deciding that they wanted to sell off the other 44% of the shares that they owned of the company. And they sold it all back to Neiman Marcus in 2006, which would give Neiman Marcus full control and full rights to the name. And essentially, Kate Spade would have nothing to do with Kate Spade New York after 2006. Personally, I think she made the right call. I mean, you're going to miss out on valuable years of your kid's life dedicated to a business that is not going to love you back, and your kid may end up struggling and suffering because of it. So it was honestly a good move on her part. She took a full decade to just focus on personal stuff, enjoy life with her and her husband Andy, and they didn't really have to worry about Kate Spade New York anymore. But it seems like after a decade of not being in the industry and doing the mom thing, she was ready to start getting back to it. It sounds like she really wanted to get back to making bags, getting back to her career, and doing something to really fill her time and fulfill her personally. And I think a lot of her identity was really sewn into those bags, with her name being literally printed on all of them. And so it was a hard separation for her to make, and I think that she really always had this passion to get back to her work. But since she sold all of the company off, she had no way to go back to Kate Spade or start doing Kate Spade anymore, and she couldn't even use the Kate Spade name, even though that was her actual legal name. So she decided to come up with a new brand, and she was actually going to focus more on shoes, leather accessories, and a lot of handbags still. So very similar company idea to what she already had, but she wanted to come in with a fresh new name. She was hoping that maybe with the loyal fan base of Kate Spade bag wearers out there, that she might be able to build this company up the same way that she did with the first one. So in 2016, just like before, with the help of Andy Spade and her friend Elise Aarons, they decided to start up another company called Frances Valentine, which is a combination of her daughter's name, Frances Beatrix Spade, and an old family member's name, like an old great-grandfather's name. His name was Valentine, I guess because he was born on Valentine's Day. This new line did fairly well, but it did not see nearly the same success that Kate Spade New York saw. And I think that was kind of a crushing blow. I think she had high hopes that she'd come back in this triumphant return. Honestly, she was trying to sell the exact same product and copy the exact same formula that she already got successful doing. There's a lot more competition out there now. She kind of rewrote the whole handbag game. So coming in with the same handbag ideas, it just wasn't going to land the same. So she had a lot of really fun prints, really fun colors in this new line. It was still fairly affordable, but still had that same Kate Spade elegant look to it. But one of the things she was still frustrated about was she couldn't put Kate Spade on the bag. And since Frances Valentine was now the name of the company, it seems like she had some weird identity crisis because she really aligned with having her name printed on the bags. She decided to change her name to Kate Frances Valentine Brosnahan Spade, something long like that. It was crazy. But that would allow her to feel like she's actually still printing her name on the bags, giving her that feeling of like fulfilling her identity. I really don't know what that was all about, but that's what she did. By this point in time, there's a lot of people who are close with Kate that know she does struggle with some anxiety and depression issues. The extent of those issues and the extent of her addiction to self-medicating for those issues is widely speculated on, and the information that I found is all conflicting, really. There's close friends and family members that will say that she had intense depression issues, anxiety, possible bipolar, and that she was using alcohol to self-medicate for that, and she had been for years, especially with the stress of starting Kate Spade New York and then trying to start this new company. And on top of that, that dark 10-year period, she was kind of in this weird limbo where she didn't really know what to do with herself. So she just turned to drinking a lot.
Kate loved to drink. She could pour a fabulous martini. She knew where to put the olive. She could twist the lemon. Kate knew her way around a well-stocked bar. Booze and cigarettes and fashion and glamour. I felt like I was living in a movie whenever Kate was around.
On top of that, she was prescribed medication for her anxiety and depression, and she was mixing alcohol and these medications, which you're not supposed to do. So that could have led to her developing worse depression issues or developing worse anxiety issues. It's all kind of speculative, though. Nobody's really sure. Her husband, on the other hand, says that she did struggle with depression and anxiety, but he also says that she didn't struggle with addiction, she wasn't self-medicating, and then he also kind of conflictingly says that she didn't really exhibit any signs or symptoms of someone who was extremely depressed. And what seems to make this so difficult to figure out with Kate is that she was such a fun, bubbly, quirky, just happy person to be around. So either she was really good at hiding it, which can be very much the case. In fact, that almost seems to be the case most of the time with people who are struggling with darkness inside. They tend to be outwardly very positive, and they tend to hide it really well underneath a mask of being quirky and funny and using humor to kind of deflect. But nearly everybody remembers Kate Spade as kind of just being bubbly and fun and extremely just a pleasant person to be around.
You ready? Okay.
I'd never met anybody so decent and quirky. She was cheeky and naughty, funny.
Oh boy.
But Kate was tough. You don't get to run a company that big unless you're tough.
Which is why on June 5th, 2018, when she was found suspended from a doorknob by a red scarf in her New York City apartment, it was a shock to everybody. Now, the night before, Bella, who's the family's housekeeper and close friend, Kate Spade actually named one of her lines from her Frances Valentine brand. She named a sandal after her. It's called the Bella sandal. But she was leaving the house later in that evening on June 4th. Everything seemed totally fine. So she wasn't expecting anything unusual when she showed up at 10:20 the next day to resume her normal duties. She came inside. It was fairly quiet. Bia's at school, so she knew she would be gone. But Kate wasn't responding to anything, so she thought maybe she was out. But that would all change when she went upstairs. She found Kate unresponsive. But instead of cutting the scarf and starting CPR right away, she ran downstairs to grab the superintendent of the apartment building, who then ran up with her, cut the scarf, and started CPR, and they were able to call 911. However, she was already gone. As per usual, this is where things start to get a little murky. On one hand, the family all says that they were completely blindsided by this. They never saw it coming. They had no idea that Kate was struggling or suffering this hard, and it was a complete shock to the family. But she has another sister who says that she might have been struggling with bipolar and that she's been battling depression, anxiety, and possible bipolar disorder for years. And she's been using alcohol and medication to medicate for it. And that combination might have caused things to get worse and might have caused her to go over the edge. So already there's some discrepancies in what's going on with the family and what their views on things are. But I'm curious what Andy's position on everything is. Well, Andy says that she didn't really show any signs that she was struggling. He had no idea that this might happen. He really didn't understand why it happened. But then he goes on to say that she also had a long history of anxiety and depression, and that she had been working on it for the last 5 years, working with doctors and therapists, trying to figure it out and get better. So which is it, Andy? Was she struggling and depressed and anxious? Or were there no signs and no symptoms and no reason for you to believe this would happen at all? Already, I'm a little confused. Also, get this, you guys. Might mean something, might mean nothing, but the night before Kate Spade decided to leave this world, she was a question on Jeopardy. Tell me that's not a little bit weird, or possibly foreshadowing, or possibly coincidence. But we've seen a lot of coincidences already. With all of these stories, we see some weird similarities, and a lot of people speculate that it's occult, satanic, ritualistic similarities. That being the red scarf, the red band versus the 2 blue and green ones in Chris Cornell's room that were found. They chose the red one, but I found some fairly occulty, ritualistic stuff having to do with Kate Spade's passing as well. Not only the red scarf, but the date that she passed was the 13th day of her 666th month. It's hard to say. How weird is that? Might mean nothing, but it might mean something. They say that they carry these things out ritualistically. Certain numbers of them, certain dates and times. There's some sort of weird ritualistic occult science behind all of these passings. Now, from the very first news reports that came out, the main focal point of everything having to do with Kate Spade's passing was around this note that she left for her daughter. According to the NYPD police report, they did confirm that there was a note left, a handwritten note, and it was addressed to her daughter, Frances Beatrix Spade, but they did not disclose the contents of the note.
She did leave a letter behind, and here's ABC's Eva Pilgrim.
Tonight, shock and sadness here in Manhattan's Say the 55-year-old was found by a housekeeper in her bedroom.
There was a suicide note left at the scene.
This was also confirmed by the housekeeper, but besides that, the note was never released. We have zero way of knowing if this note is real, if it existed, what it said, anything about it. All we have to go on is this leaked information and confirmation from the NYPD. According to TMZ and other major news sources at the time, so obviously take this with a grain of salt, the letter that she left for her daughter, among other things, said, "Frances, I have always loved you. This is not your fault. Ask Daddy." Now at this time, Bia is 13 years old, so she's not a small child. She's definitely old enough to understand what's going on. She's certainly old enough to understand if there's infidelity in the marriage. She's certainly old enough to know if there's major issues between her mom and dad, and she's probably seen them firsthand if there is. So this note didn't necessarily make any sense to me unless you look at it for what it says. It says, "Ask Daddy." That to me is an accusation, because I wouldn't imagine that a mother who is now self-exiting like this would suddenly want to put blame on the father and make it seem like he's the reason for this, causing further trauma to her child. If she loves her daughter and she's leaving this note for her as like a comfort, as a goodbye, then why would she throw out accusations and cause more trauma to this poor girl? The only way that message, "Ask Daddy," makes any sense is if he had some legitimate reason as to why she is now gone. So obviously, I immediately focused in on Andy. Even Kate is pointing to Andy. So what's up with Andy? By this point, the two of them have been together for 24 years since college. They've grown a massive multi-million-dollar business together. They've sold that business. They've had one child together. And then they've begun embarking on a second business venture together. So the two of them obviously would be pretty close, right? If not totally sick and tired of each other by this point. But what was their relationship status at this point in time? Again, there's a lot of confusion and speculation, because Andy was actually living for 6 months at this point down the street from Kate Spade's apartment. They lived in separate places, and supposedly they were not talking about divorce, they were just separated. Now, in my opinion, if you're going to move out and rent another apartment for a duration of 6+ months, then that is not just a casual, we're still working on things, we're still really close, we just needed a little bit of a space, kind of a break.
We were on a break. We were on a break. We were on a break. We were on a break. We were on a break.
That's not what that is. That is separation. That is on the road to divorce. That is slowly trying to figure out how we're going to separate things and make this work. And there's proof of that. Andy was not living with Bia and Kate. In fact, Andy wasn't at the house when everything happened. He didn't get there until way later. He didn't even see this note that was left. He was extremely frustrated that the news media leaked some of the contents of this note before he even had a chance to see it. It's like, bro, the note wasn't for you, although it did contain things about you. So, very interesting that he didn't even see it. And the fact that Andy claims that they were not on the road to divorce, I'm not buying that. That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, they live in completely different worlds. They also have a lot more money than me, so maybe moving down the street for 6 months to an apartment actually is something pretty normal. But in my eyes, that seems like they're fully separated and likely headed for divorce. The other weirdly interesting, conflicting piece of information that Andy gave is what I mentioned before. He says in one statement that Kate Spade struggled with anxiety and depression for 5+ years and was actively working on getting better and getting help for it. But then he also goes on to say that he had no idea that something like this would happen. There was no signs. This was completely unexpected. If you ask me, someone who has serious anxiety and depression issues is always at risk of doing this. So that doesn't make any sense to me either. That's conflicting, and I'm confused more. Andy was also spotted outside of Kate Spade's apartment with other people, kind of laughing, seemingly in a decent mood. And if my partner of 24 years just left this world under those circumstances, I don't think I would ever crack a smile. Maybe ever again. I'd be so heartbroken and sad. And yeah, that didn't compute with me either. But nothing was more confusing to me than 2 days after Kate Spade's passing, when Andy Spade was seen walking out of his apartment in New York City wearing this mouse mask. And of course, everybody's like, WTF, dude, what's with the mask? He just replies like, don't you people have any concern for other people's privacy? And kind of gets in this car and just takes off and blazes out. Official stories say that the reason he was wearing the mask was because he just didn't want to be seen publicly after Kate Spade's passing. But this is now 2 days later. He's been seen publicly, but him going out in this mask seemed like a pretty interesting choice of mask. Like, you couldn't just put on a hat or like a scarf or like even like a COVID mask or something, like just to cover your face up, maybe just some big sunglasses. Because in my opinion, you go outside wearing a giant rat mask, you're going to be more of a target. You're going to be more sought after. People are going to be so confused. They're going to want to know, what's with the mask, bro? You're going to attract twice as much attention wearing that mask than you would if you just tried to hide yourself under some regular clothes. And when I say that this mask had the internet ablaze with speculation, I'm not lying. People were all speculating as to what could this possibly mean. Some people say that it was a statement of him saying that either he's a rat or Kate was a rat, and don't rat because this is what happens to you. There's all kinds of speculation about what the meaning of this mask is. Now, the first thing I want to say about this mask is that it's not a mask you can just go on Amazon and buy real quick. In fact, it's not even a mask that I was able to find ever. It's not a mask. It's just not a thing. Like, where did you get this mask from, dude? Did you really just have that laying around your house? Because if so, that's a collector's item, and there's no way that you would just have that laying around. The mask is such a strange piece of all of this, you guys. Go ahead, go right now. Try and buy that mask. Try and find it. In fact, I'll even give you some help. The mask itself comes from an old Disney movie called The Rescuers. Once I started looking into the history of this movie and some of the things surrounding it, things got way more interesting. And I wouldn't say that they started piecing together, but I would say that it opened up a lot more questions for me. Now, this Disney movie came out in 1977, so it's a fairly old movie. And the two main characters are these mice who work for a little mouse rescue organization that works underneath the United Nations. And they set out to rescue this little girl named Penny. And she's being held captive by this awful, evil Madame Medusa. And I do want to highlight the Madame portion of Madame Medusa. And she's holding her captive because of her small size. She's the only person that she has that's able to fit into this tight space in this cave to retrieve the Devil's Eye diamond for her. First of all, what's with all the satanic stuff in this kids movie? What's with the child trafficking themes in this kids movie? Also, does this mouse organization really work for the UN? But that's not all, you guys. This movie gets way more interesting. First of all, Bernard and Bianca, the two little mice from this movie, both live in New York City, which already aligns with Kate and Andy. But there is a wave of backlash on this movie when somehow, and don't ask me how, because I really don't know how they probably had to go rewind, fast forward, pause, like 100 million times in order to get it to stop perfectly, in order to see this one tiny little image that some guy in the animation team at Disney decided he was going to put in this kids movie. But if you look very closely in the background, as these mice are flying on the back of this bird and they're falling through the city of New York, they pass one window, and it's the only window that seems to have anything happening in it. But once you freeze frame on that window, what do you see? Exactly, a weirdly mangled, possibly headless, naked woman figure. Is it a statue? Is it some sort of sign or symbol? Or is it just explicit material put into a kid's movie? Either way, people didn't like it. And the movie got tons of backlash for it, and rightfully so, like WTF yet again. So that led me to think, okay, well, this movie it's already kind of a hot button topic, and it had a lot of people speculating and upset about it. So maybe that has something to do with what happened with Kate. But it didn't really seem to have any real direct ties to it. But it was interesting, and it made me want to look even further into this movie. So I thought maybe there was some sort of scandals or allegations against the voice actor that played Bernard. Maybe that's why Andy was wearing this mask, because he was saying that he represents this character, or maybe he represents the guy who played this character, or was alluding to this guy in some way. So I looked into him, and this voice actor's name was Bob Newhart. There was really not a whole lot of interesting information about this guy. Pretty normal acting career, nothing special. But made me want to look into Bianca. And the actress who played the voice for Bianca, her name is Eva Gabor. And she's a Hungarian actress. She's mostly known for her role in Green Acres. She was also in The Aristocrats and a movie called Gigi. But really, the last projects that she worked on was this Rescuers movie and then the subsequent sequel, which was Disney's very first sequel to any movie they did. This was the last two projects that she worked on. But the interesting thing about Eva Gabor is that she had some pretty interesting circumstances surrounding what happened to her when she passed away in 1995. She went down on vacation to Mexico, and while she was down there, she somehow slipped in a bathtub. And then when she was taken to the hospital for a pretty normal recovery, because she must have hurt herself pretty bad in this fall, she ended up getting pneumonia, and then she passed away in 1995 at the age of 76. Now, if you've seen on any of my other stories, then you know that bathtub and pneumonia are trigger words for me. So it just made me want to look a little bit deeper into her. So I found this book that her friend actually had written. It was a close friend of hers. She's written many books about her, actually. But one of the books she wrote is very interesting. It talks about how she does not believe what happened to Eva is what actually happened. She thinks that somebody intentionally did this to her. And then she talks a lot about the MK Ultra project and how they're able to use different technologies to be able to infiltrate your mind. And so for a lot of people, it sounds very tinfoil hatty, but with the release of the JFK files yesterday, I couldn't imagine that people would be skeptical about what the CIA is capable of. Regardless, she's a very close friend, and she does not believe the official story of what happened to her friend. If you think about the connection between her story, and she plays the voice of a mouse who is a co-star in this movie with another mouse, his mask was worn on this guy whose wife also just passed away. The connection is definitely there. I don't know if necessarily this is what the mask was referring to, but it is interesting. In light of all of the controversy around this movie, the picture that they snuck in there, now Eva Gabor and this alternate theory of what might have happened to her, plus the weird suspicious circumstances around what did happen to her, it was all pretty interesting. So I was definitely feeling like there was a lot more to this mouse mask with Andy Spade than him just trying to hide from the paparazzi. The other thing that I and a lot of other people personally found kind of striking and a little bit off-putting about this mask was the fact that it does show a little bit of the red shirt that the mouse wears in the movie. And if you look at the mask, it actually ends up looking like a little red scarf, if you know what I'm saying, which seems to be fairly insensitive, if you ask me. But in light of that peculiar note accusing Andy of something, and now this information about what that mask might mean, my interest was piqued with Andy. I was like, what's going on with this dude? And a lot of you might know this, some of you might not, but Andy Spade is actually David Spade, aka Joe Dirt. It's David Spade's brother. So he actually has pretty serious ties to Hollywood as well. He's not just famous through his wife, Kate Spade, and their massive handbag company. Okay, so what? His brother's David Spade. Who cares? Well, I'll tell you guys. David Spade is an interesting character. For starters, there's numerous times where I personally have come across things that he said that allude to the fact that he is into younger women. And by younger, I mean like a lot younger. Like he's in his 50s now and he's dating people who are in their 20s. In retrospect, when they're like 1 year old, he's like 25 years old. Or when they're 10 years old, he's like 35 to 40 years old. Think of it that way. He's into younger women. And I've got a few different videos that prove this.
I go, there's Paul McCartney tickets and front row in a meet and greet, and Bruce Springsteen in a meet and greet in front row. And I go, that's pretty cool. And she's staring at me. I go, do you know who Paul McCartney is? She's like, dude, I don't know who Maroon 5 is, all right? I'm young, you're old. Is there a problem? I go, no. Hey,
I'm quarantined, obviously. I mean, even on Pornhub yesterday, they said, hot quarantines in your area. I wonder if that's true. That feels like clickbait.
sometimes I date girls that aren't my exact same age. Like they're lower a little bit, but mature. Like they have to have a GED for sure. They don't have to. And by the way, and sometimes it's awkward, like you're out and then you hear like a Led Zeppelin song and their face is blank. And I'm like, you don't know who Led Zeppelin is? They're like, dude, I don't know who Maroon 5 is, all right? I'm young and you're old, is there a problem? I'm like, no. There's a girl the other day that argued me because she got in I have like an old car and she goes, do you have an aux card? And I go, I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what that is. She goes, aux cord. I go, it's slower and I still don't know. I go, do you mean ox like the animal? And she's like, what? I'm like, well, you don't know what that is and I don't know what that is. And she goes, to plug in my phone. I go, oh, I don't know. It's a 1995 Land Cruiser. I don't have reverse, all right? So.
But that doesn't necessarily mean anything. That doesn't mean he's doing anything wrong. He can be into younger women, and if younger women want to be into older guys, that's totally fine. But it could be alluding to a deeper problem, just the fact that he so openly talks about being into younger women the way he does. The quarantines in your area, that was like, what? Teens in your area? Why should you be interested in that? But then he goes even further and he starts talking about this random Tom Hanks stuff. And he seems like overly concerned about Tom Hanks's well-being and him pulling through with COVID.
I would take that. I mean, this all rides on Tom Hanks. Let's be honest. Tom Hanks, national treasure. I love him. We did SNL together. He's a fucking stud. But he's down in Australia like Quentin Quarantino, and I don't like the fact that he's not in the box. Forget Willow Smith. Let's get Tom Hanks in a clear box and watch him. Because if Tom Hanks pulls through, we are going to be so stoked. It's all riding on Tom Hanks, you guys. If anything happens to Tom Hanks, that shit's over, dude. I'm just going to be like, on my roof. Bye.
The official story is that Tom Hanks kind of just fell off the map, disappeared when he was in Australia, and everybody was saying that he was in hardcore quarantine and was struggling physically because he had gotten COVID. But then when Tom Hanks comes out of this period of disappearance in Australia, some of the first spottings of him show pictures and it looks like he's got an ankle bracelet on. So it's led tons of people to speculate maybe Tom Hanks got in trouble while he was down in Australia and that's why he was quarantined, quote unquote. And it's not just Tom Hanks. There's videos and pictures that show Ellen DeGeneres and Oprah all seeming to be like quarantined in this, what people say is like house arrest, essentially. It's worse than quarantine. You can't go outside even. You can't go anywhere without wearing your ankle bracelet, and you can only go to certain places at certain times. So with this whole thing with Tom Hanks now, it's led a lot of people to wonder why. But even weirder is why is David Spade so concerned about Tom Hanks being okay? Why does everything ride on Tom Hanks? Why is David Spade willing to over Tom Hanks?
Be like on my roof. Bye.
Well, this is what leads us right back into my Isaac Cappy episode, because what we learned in that one is that Tom Hanks is not the upstanding America's dad figure that we all thought he was. In fact, there's been allegations that he's been involved with child exploitation, and there's even crazier allegations saying that he is the ringleader and the one in charge of sourcing adrenochrome for all these different celebrities so that they can maintain their youth and their health. So for some reason, Tom Hanks is a real high up member in this occult network. And people think that he was responsible for taking out Cappy, especially after seeing that super cryptic post with the little bottle cap with the letter P on it, with the glove saying, roadkill? I hope not. Historic Route 66, the same bridge and place where Isaac Cappy was found. It all just is too strange. But with David Spade making all of these comments and being so openly panicked about where Tom Hanks is and making sure that he's okay, it has led to so much speculation that David Spade must be involved with Tom Hanks in some way. He has some skin in the game to be so worried about what's going on with Tom Hanks.
It's Friday, guys. I would love an update on Tom Hanks. I don't mean hourly, I mean minutely. I mean, it's literally like huge chunks of time. I want to know what's happening. Where's Rita? What are you doing? Having fun? Tom Hanks is tough, and I think if he pulls through, I'm going to breathe a sigh of relief, and I think he will. He's my boy! Don't touch your neck. They didn't say the neck. Can I grab a Cobra sandwich? Nah, you know, the heat's on us. We got a sort of couple days. A lot of flack worldwide, so we're going to kind of... I can get you some rat soup. No bat soup? What did I just say? You want rat soup or not? Yes.
It just makes you wonder. But it doesn't stop there, you guys. Kate Spade, though she left in 2006 from the Kate Spade New York company, and she sold all of her shares, she no longer had any ties with the company. It was then sold to Neiman Marcus, and then later on, it was actually sold in, I believe, 2016 or 2017 to another company called Tapestry Inc., which is another bigger company owned by multiple different shareholders, one of which is BlackRock, of course. But this bigger major company is doing all these other things that Kate Spade has no say in what goes on with the company now. But her name is directly tied to that brand, that label, the company, any of their initiatives, any scandals they're tied up in, anything. Most people probably didn't even know that Kate Spade had nothing to do with Kate Spade New York at this point. But literally since 2006, she can't even use her own name because it's owned by somebody else. So she has a huge stake in what happens with that company because the image of that company directly reflects on her image. It's her name. And we already saw how tied to her name she was with it being on all those bags, so much that she'd change her name for her new line. So it just leaves a whole lot of questions of, did she learn something about what this other company was doing that might have led her to want to blow the whistle and say something to kind of maintain her own reputation? And that became a whole lot more possible when I realized that in 2015, Kate Spade, the actual company, was a huge donor to the Clintons' No Ceilings project. This project was aimed at raising awareness about gender equality, and it was supposed to boost up girls and women as they entered the workforce. Kate Spade actually did a Not There campaign for this whole project. And in 2016, Kate Spade, the company, actually went down to Haiti, which is, they're kind of starting to get a little bit more buzz with their economy. Things are starting to come back a little bit, not very much, but a little bit. And they went on a Clinton-led trip down to Haiti where they were looking at different sourcing opportunities and business partnerships with the local Haitian merchants. Tell me that doesn't sound like they're trying to use or exploit people down in Haiti to get cheaper labor to make their super high-end overpriced bags. And unfortunately, the fashion industry is littered with accusations of outsourcing labor, using third world countries to source materials, terrible working conditions, long working hours. So it's not something that's outside the realm of possibility. And if Kate Spade found out that this is what her company that she used to own was doing, and it was going to tarnish her name as well as her brand, Frances Valentine, then maybe she had motive to say something and speak out against this stuff. And this is just a little fun fact, little anecdote. I found it very interesting and I couldn't not put it in here. But on the very same day that Kate Spade was found unresponsive on June 5th, 2018, Ivanka Trump and Rachel Clinton both come out and make a statement about Kate Spade. Rachel Clinton says that she still remembers when she got her first bag from her grandma, her first Kate Spade bag, and she still has it and sends her condolences to the friends and family. And Ivanka talks about how she'll be missed and just talks about mental health awareness. And so I thought that was pretty interesting, like the day of these big political figures, though I'm sure that it was a loss to them too, because they probably did wear her bags. But it seemed a little soon for them to come out and start making these statements about their condolences and stuff the day of. And it almost seemed like they were trying really hard to continue to push this official narrative of what they want you to think happened. That's just speculation on my part, but I did find it very interesting that Rachel Clinton made that post. I also found it very strange that that is the same day that Anthony Bourdain tweeted that he has information that will get HRC thrown in prison. Pretty wild stuff. Like June 5th, 2018 was a wild day. But considering all of this stuff, it just made me wonder, like, what's the link between everything? And that's when I realized it's David Spade. David Spade actually goes on Jimmy Kimmel and he's telling this not so funny, but he thinks it's funny story about how he begrudgingly donated $125,000 to the Jenkins Penn Haitian Relief Organization that had set up a fundraiser, like a celebrity fundraiser down in Los Angeles, to raise funds for Haitian relief after the earthquakes. One of the ticket items that he was bidding on was some Paul McCartney tickets, which he even says in the video was tops like $600. And somehow the bidding made it all the way up to $125,000. What were they actually bidding on?
I remember one that there's some of these are really fun. They make them fun. You're giving money, you're trying to help. Sean Penn is a sort of a buddy of mine, and he has the thing for Haiti. Now, he goes to Haiti. There was a big earthquake a few years back. He literally gets in there. I'm not exactly like that. Like, he invites me down there. I'm like, no chance, I mean, I'm sort of a and by the way, I don't for sure know where Haiti is. If you had a gun to my head, I couldn't tell you on the map. But I've heard nice things. But then he goes, we're having a big celebrity thing at the Montage a mile from your house. I go, okay, I can go to that. So I went there, and then you give money, and they have bands play, and it's like 300 celebs, rich people. So I go, cool. But then I brought a girl trying to puff up naturally like a loser.
Yeah.
And I'm walking, I'm like, it's Charlize, pow, pow. I'm like, hey, everybody, Everyone's like, wow. And then I get in, and then there's they have these auctions where they have these big ticket items, and they have really cool things, and your little buzz, so you buy them, and it goes right to the charity, so it's great. So she goes, you gonna bid on anything? I go, oh yeah. Stay close. There's going to be some money flying around.
There's a guy on stage, and everybody's
they sort of bully you.
Yeah, they embarrass you, especially
and
if you're
Sean's up there, So I go, there's Paul McCartney tickets and front row in a meet and greet, and Bruce Springsteen in a meet and greet in front row. And I go, that's pretty cool. And she's staring at me. I go, do you know who Paul McCartney is? She's like, dude, I don't know who Maroon 5 is, all right? I'm young, you're old. Is there a problem? I go, no. Hey, I'll see you. So I go, but I'm going to bid on that. She goes, great. I go, I might go up to 20K, 20 large. I go, don't worry about it. Just buckle up. So I have my little paddle, and Sean's like, all right, the McCartney tickets. And I go like this. I go, I get my paddle, and they go, starting 50 grand. I go, huh? What did you say? You said 50? It was noisy. And then he goes, 50, Spade. I go, no. Don't you start at 1, and then you go up, and then I look cool. I go, that's my top. And he goes, 50. Then he goes, 60, 70, 80, Spade. I go, we're back to Spade? And she's sort of less turned on at this point because she's me freaking out. I had this big A$AP Rocky thing going for a second. Now I'm like, Woody Allen. So I go, no, I don't. And then I see DiCaprio, like, who's the cheapskate? Everyone's craning around. I go, 80. And then,
you did?
Yeah, I
did
go 80. And then they go 90. 100. Back to me. I go, 100,000? Meanwhile, in my head, I'm like, what are those tickets? $600 face value? It's a bit of a markup. So I go, and then I see Charlize looking over, and I go, so I go, and then she, and then me, and then I go, yeah, 100. Okay, obviously not happy at all about the charity, anything. I'm just like, And then I'm looking to see if my show got picked up. I'm looking at my phone. Oh my God. And then they pull the full Dipsy Doodle, which I've never seen. They go, 125 over there. And I go, please, anyone, any rich mother effers, save me. And they go, 125. Then Sean goes, Spade, 125. I go, well, no. That's not how it works. I'm the 100 guy. Someone has to beat me. Come on. I go, what a trick. And everyone's like, Spade.
Oh, no.
125.
You paid it?
Yep.
Wow.
Is that unreal?
You know what?
I was literally quivering. And then, shoot, a team of 9 people, sign here, press hard, 4 copies, carbon copy. Here, what you
They want it right away.
Carfax, yeah. They just get it right away, and then they scram while you're still, euphoric.
But the good news is you are a hero to the people of Haiti.
Yes,
I'm sure there are probably billboards around.
Posters everywhere. This money I get for this show, that, 400 or whatever, is the final payment.
It's the final payment.
So you helped out, too.
And if you think back to my last episode where we were talking about Diana Jenkins and the Room 23 book, one of the things it said is that book is like a menu for when you go to these different fundraisers where you're auctioning and bidding on dinners or a night with XYZ celebrity. The idea is that there's a whole lot more that you're bidding on than just this little one-on-one date, maybe like a food and conversation with this celebrity, especially with the dollar values that are getting dropped at these different fundraisers. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars from these different celebrities. The connection between David Spade going down and making this donation and being involved with Sean Penn as closely as he is, because apparently they're buddies, it just made me wonder, how close is David Spade with all of this stuff? And then all of his comments and his panic about Tom Hanks and all the stuff that Tom Hanks has been accused of, extremely concerning. And it made me think that if Kate Spade did know something, she would maybe tell Andy, and Andy would maybe tell David, and David would probably tell somebody else. The word would spread so fast. So anything that Kate Spade might have been onto would immediately have been leaked from her own brother-in-law. The other interesting thing about David Spade is right after his sister-in-law passes away, he makes a couple of posts online, which at first glance seem sentimental and caring and loving. But if you look at some of his word choice, it seems a bit insensitive and maybe cryptic. He uses the word hang in both of his posts. Seems a little messed up if you ask me. And I mean, Sean Penn's kind of a weird character as well for him to be so close with. He's kind of an enigma, and one of the things that I stumbled upon in all my research was he randomly, after 10 years of El Chapo Guzman being on the run after he escaped from prison, he decided that he wanted to go get a face-to-face interview with him. And even though the federal government was not able to hunt down this international fugitive, somehow Sean Penn was able to secure an interview with him. And he interviewed El Chapo and just asked him some normal questions. And he basically talks about how he's not a violent guy, but he does start trouble wherever he goes. And super weird. Also, fun fact, my dog's name is El Chapo Jr., Jr. But how is Sean Penn able to even get this interview in the first place? But then, shortly after Sean Penn does this interview, guess who ends up in federal custody? Oh yes, you guessed it, El Chapo Guzman. So what kind of ties does this dude have to political networks, the government, the feds? And why is Sean Penn able to just go down and get an interview with El Chapo? Was he working with the government? It has nothing to do with anything in this case that I'm talking about, but it was interesting and I wanted to tell you about it. And the last piece that I really wanted to go through with you guys is something that I had kind of talked about in my last episode. Really what I wanted to do was focus on what we are being told, because all of the focus with all these different theories is on what they're not telling us. But what are they telling us? Because that can give us clues into what they're not telling us, because it's what they want us to think. And one of the things that I stumbled upon time and time again was people saying how Kate Spade was ruminating and obsessing about Robin Williams' passing.
Kate Spade was obsessed with the suicide of Robin Williams, who took his own life in 2014. The famed fashion designer became fixated on the wall-to-wall news coverage of the 63-year-old actor's death.
News of his suicide has made the world pause.
Kate's sister, Rita Sappho, says she kept watching it over and over. I think the plan was already in motion, even as far back as then. The parallels are eerie. Kate Spade tied a red scarf around a doorknob in her bedroom and hanged herself here at her Park Avenue apartment in Manhattan. Robin Williams hanged himself with a belt he secured with a closet door.
As you guys can probably imagine, Robin Williams will be coming up very shortly, probably next week. But Kate Spade was obsessive about what happened to him. There's only a couple of reasons why I would obsess about somebody doing that to themselves. And that's because I didn't understand it, or I know something about what happened and everybody else believes something else happened. I don't know. There's only a couple of reasons why someone would be so obsessed with the passing of another person, especially when it was a self-exit. And people are trying to portray it in the news media, friends and family. Everybody is trying to say that maybe this contributed to her ideating about it a little bit more. Maybe it made it easier for her to accept it. Maybe this is why she chose to do it. Maybe she idolized what Robin Williams did because she loved him so much. Like, there's all these things being thrown out about how Robin Williams heavily influenced her decision to do this. But I think it could be the other way. She might have been obsessing about Robin Williams because she didn't believe the official narrative and she knew something that was going on or was suspicious of something that was going on, and she wanted to say something. And maybe she was going to. And that's what got her. I don't know. I thought it was a pretty interesting piece of the puzzle and didn't really make any sense as to why they would continue to throw that in, news stories and personal anecdotes here and there. It just seemed unnecessary, unless they really wanted us to see both of these as connected through emotion and not connected through alternative theories, if you know what I mean. Because Robin Williams also is another case that just has a lot of questions surrounding it. So with Kate Spade passing away at the time she did, she falls in line with all of these other stories we've talked about. And not only that, but they've all used the same method of exit, which to me does not seem like the best possible choice. Like, in the new age, it feels like more people end up just taking too many pills, and that is a more peaceful way to go out. And all of these people had pills in their possession they could have taken too many of, but they didn't. They all decided to take the most painful, excruciating way possible, i.e. suffocating, and they all did it in positions where their feet would have been on the floor, and it seems like they would have had a pretty easy time avoiding what happened. In Kate Spade's instance, it said that she tied the scarf to the door and then leaned into it, which means she was in full control of what she was doing, or it was erotic asphyxiation. That could have been the case for all of these stories. And then with all these weird circumstances and connections surrounding Kate Spade, all these interesting people who are fairly quiet and don't really have a whole lot to say about anything, and then this note that essentially just accuses Andy Spade of something, but we don't know what. I don't know. There's so much weirdness going on here. I have so many questions, and hopefully some of these pieces help us put them together. I feel like they're things that other videos and sources that I read through have not talked about. So I don't know. Maybe one day we'll get some answers, but I want to know what you guys think. You guys always seem to have some information or some knowledge that I don't have. So let me know in the comments what you guys think happened. And if you just can't get enough sobering stories, or you want to check out the previous stories I've done in my Hung series, then check out this playlist right here, the Hung playlist. I'll put it right at the top. If you want to listen to every single story that I've ever done, I've got a Sobering Stories playlist right here. Otherwise, if you like just, I don't know, YouTube forcing you into stuff that you're not really sure about, then check out this video right here, because that's what it thinks you should watch. But if you haven't subscribed, why? It's right here. You can do it. I believe in you. But I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me for this long, listening to my story. Thanks for letting me share a little bit about myself. I'm looking forward to doing this again with you guys next week for another one. And until then, stay safe, stay sober. Later, sobers.
Let's go.